Okay, today we're going to talk about how to draw a net. So I know we've already had a couple of lessons on how to draw nets, but today we're really going to break it down into the steps that you can take to draw a really successful net. So I have this shape over here. Now, according to today's lesson, we know that this is a prism because it's got two parallel sides. You see these triangles on the top and the bottom? Those are parallel faces, right? They're like the same distance apart from each other at all points, right? And if they continued on, they would never touch, so we know they're parallel sides. And we know that this is a prism. So we have some labeled sides here. Let's try to label all the different sides we can, just so that we know what the lengths of our sides are going to be when we split it up into a net. So if this value right here is 8, and this back panel, you see this shape, it's like on the back of the prism. If that's a rectangle, we know that this length also must be 8. Same for 13. Top and bottom values, both going to be 13. Now for this front of the prism, we're going to have 12 on the top, 12 on the bottom too, because it's also a rectangle. And then another 8 over here. That height is the same. For this back triangle, for this bottom triangle, I mean, we now have the side lengths 5, 13, and 12, but let's also put a 5 up here because we know that these two triangles are the same. So now we have a lot of different values on our 3D figure, and we're going to start working at how we can make this into a net, into a flat representation of all the sides. So first thing we're going to do is we're just going to pick one of the sides to start with. Remember, there can be like different nets for just one 3D figure. That means you can start with any side and you can come up with a successful net. So let's start. What I'd like to do today is start with, you see this like little end piece of the prism? This one, this back piece right here, the one that's 5 by 8. Let's draw that first. 5 by 8. I'm gonna make it a little smaller because it may be hard for me to fit this entire thing open on the board. So we're gonna label this is 5 and this is 8. Okay, now let's think about how the other faces of the shape are connected to that piece at the end of the prism. Let's draw these triangles, top and bottom triangles. Now we see that there's a right angle on the triangle, right? So we have to make sure that one of the sides of the triangle is connected by a right angle to this rectangle. So let's draw that first one. Let's draw the top one. We know that there's a right angle between the length that's 5 and then the length that's 12. So that's our 12. Let's draw in our right angle. So you see how this is basically this triangle if it were flipped up and flattened out. And now I have this length. It's a little bit wonky. I can't draw very straight lines, I'm afraid. And that's going to be your 13 length. So you see I've got that triangle. It's basically that back rectangle with the triangle flipped up. Okay, let's do the bottom one now. That right angle is also in that bottom triangle because we know those two triangles are the same. So let's make sure we include that right angle here as well. There's our right angle, and then we draw the rest of the triangle. So we have 12, 5, and 13. Great. So we've now got 3 shapes in our net. However, there are 5 faces on this shape. Top triangle, bottom triangle, front rectangle, back rectangle, and end rectangle. So we have left the front rectangle and the back rectangle. Those are identical, but what's important is that we make sure we have the right values. Oh, they're not identical. I'm sorry, my mistake. We have to make sure we have the right values in the right places. It has been a long day for me, probably for you too as well. So let's both try to get some sleep tonight. So this is the important part here because you want to make sure that your values are in the right places so that when the lines come back together, if you were to make your 3D shape again, they would actually line up. So for instance, the rectangle that I put on this side, let's sketch it real quick. What length is this side going to be? Well, we have 2 choices. The front rectangle has side lengths of 12, and then the back rectangle has side lengths of 13. So we can either make this 12 or 13, but we're not going to make it 13, we're going to make it 12, and I'll tell you why. You see how these two shapes, right? If I were to fold this net up, this line right here would connect with that one, which means they have to have equivalent values. That's going to be our 12 right there. So that's going to be the front rectangle. Now drawing the back one, I'm going to label this 13. And why? Because when I fold up the shape, that edge is going to touch that edge. And they have to have the same value so that they seal up without any gap. Okay, so this would be a full net of that shape. Let's do a quick check. The things that I'm going to do to check that my net is correct are three things. First, I'm going to check that it has the correct number of shapes, as this has faces. Then I'm going to check that it has the right kinds of shapes, so like triangles, rectangles, squares, whatever, as the 3D shape. And thirdly, I'm going to check that each line that ends up touching once I fold it back together is the same value. Here we go. How many faces does this have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How many shapes does this have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Great. Our first checkpoint is met. Second checkpoint. What kind of shapes are in this? Well, I've got a 12 by 8 rectangle, a 13 by 8 rectangle. Let's check those out. 12 by 8, 13 by 8. Forgot to write a 8 here. Whoops. And then I have a 5 by 8 rectangle on the end. This is my 5 by 8 rectangle right here. And then I've got two triangles that are a height of 5, a base of 12, and a side length of 13. That's my 5, 12, 13. My second checkpoint is met. Third checkpoint. Are all the lines that are going to line up with each other and meet when I fold the shape, are they all equal? Let's look. 12 is going to line up with 12 when this folds in, 12 and 12 when this folds in, 13 and 13 when that folds, 13 and 13 when that folds. Perfect. So my net has met all three checkpoints, and it is a correct net for that shape. I hope this helped you. I'm sorry for my slip-ups. I am quite tired, and I hope that you now understand nets more fully and you're able to do your homework more quickly and then get more sleep. All right, I'll see you tomorrow.